Hello, I'm Robert, and I'm just going to say a little bit more about the idea that perhaps Jake Sullivan may well have communicated to Putin, certainly something or other, to discourage him from using tactical nukes. So the idea is to stop him from doing it if he's even considering it. And he may not even be considering it. He mayn't have even been considering it because it seemed vanishingly unlikely. There was so much against it. So it would be absolutely useless in the battlefield because the Russian soldiers are not trained to fight on a battlefield with fallout, and not the ones that are there now. And if anything, the Ukrainians would be better equipped and better able to take advantage. It would be I'm certainly not going to use it against NATO. I've talked about that already in a previous video. And then the last thing is, would he use it to kind of try and scare and intimidate the Ukrainians? And it's a strategy that clearly wouldn't work. But and Putin has seen that through the war that it doesn't work. But he still does it because his ultra-nationalists and his military bloggers, they kind of egg him on to do it. So say, you've got to do something. Look, go and damage the infrastructure, or go and drop a nuke or something. So that's about the only way he'd do it. It would be devastating for the Russian foreign policy, because for China and India, Russia then would just become another rogue nation, indeed much more rogue than North Korea is, if it was to use nukes in such a way. And the rest of the world would then just be looking at what can we do to control Russia and to prevent them doing that again. So that would be a huge disadvantage in terms of foreign policy. It would be rubbish. But suppose that he has done some very short-sighted, very stupid things during this war. So could it be so short-sighted, so stupid as to use a tactical nuke to try and terrorize the Ukrainians just in order to curry favour with his own ultra-nationalists, or for some completely, just because Zelensky said that he didn't want to say about Putin that he wouldn't use a nuke, because if he did that, then he might just say, well, oh really, I'm going to do it. So some petty reason like that. So this is to discouraging him from doing that. Then we look at what happened to the Moskva. So we already have precedent here. And we don't know, but I said target in the Black Sea was one of the things that General Petraeus hinted at. So the idea is, if I understand it, is that if Putin was vaguely thinking about using a tactical nuke still, despite all the obvious disadvantages and obvious reasons not to, then they would say the only reason would be to try and humiliate the Ukrainians, and trying to intimidate the Ukrainians and scare them, and for the purposes of his ultranationals. So the response, I think, would be something that Putin himself would find utterly humiliating. And that happened very quickly and catastrophic for him, and be the end of his regime. And so by catastrophic, I mean catastrophic for him personally, catastrophic for the Russian army if he did it. So the General Petraeus talked about one possibility, which was, he talked about three possibilities in southern Ukraine, in Crimea, and in the Black Sea. And in the Black Sea, well, what else is there except the Black Sea Fleet? And the Moskva has already been sunk. And of course, Putin, he can't escalate, he can't retaliate to that. He's got no answer to that. Nothing equivalent he could do back to anyone. Short of using nukes, which he's obviously not going to do, using nukes against NATO or something like that, or using nukes against Ukraine, I mean, that's just going to make the situation far, far worse. And he didn't do that. And whenever these red lines have been crossed, he hasn't used nukes. But so, if he drops one tactical nuke on Ukraine, then go and look, this is the Black Sea Fleet, which is very prestigious for the Ukrainian military, and it goes back to the 19th century, and I don't know how far back it goes. It's been a matter of great national pride. And so he might well say that and this is during Russia's Black Sea Fleet, during the Navy Day celebrations. And these would be utterly defenceless against NATO missiles, we now understand, based on the performance of the aircraft, the anti-aircraft missiles, which they didn't know before, but I don't think they knew before, but it became clear with HIMARS that they just have no capability of stopping it. You just go straight through their missiles, and the missiles can't stop them. Their air defences, and even their very best air defences, just can't stop HIMARS. And it seems very likely that the Saki was also ATACMS, and it's quite possible that the Kerch Bridge was. It's one of the theories, the one that I personally think seems most credible. And it certainly it doesn't seem at all likely that they can stop the ATACMS. So Jake Sullivan may well have warned Putin that if he hits Ukraine with a tactical nuke, that within a short period of time, perhaps half an hour, that the 40 warships in his Black Sea Fleet will be slowly sinking like the Moskva did. That's quite a plausible thing to say. It'd be something like that. It'd be carefully calibrated so as not to be escalatory, in the sense that Putin thinks that he can in any way get an advantage by sort of trying to do anything like that back. It'd be something really quite big and totally humiliating, and something that it would be the end of his regime, and there'd be nothing really he could do at that point. And the whole point in that is to just discourage him from even considering using a tactical nuke. So they're not really expecting this to actually be needed, but that it would be something like that he might be saying to Putin. And basically it would be the end of his regime, and he couldn't make it any better by using more nukes in Ukraine, because it would just be so humiliating for him that nothing he could do could kind of counteract that for his domestic audience, which would be the people he's doing it for. So that's the idea. Just something that would be just so utterly humiliating for Russia that there's no way that his domestic audience would see it as a plus, that he dropped a tactical nuke on Ukraine and then all the Black Sea ships sunk. It wouldn't be a quid pro quo or anything like that. They just, no matter how barbarian they are or whatever, they just, there's no way. And then there's the human side to this that a lot of people don't seem to really relate to, especially the military people. But if Putin did use a tactical nuke in Ukraine, then and then half an hour later is plenty enough time for the videos to be up on YouTube, and people talking about it and sharing the videos, and widely known that this has happened, the mushroom clouds, and the starting the world's biggest humanitarian mission. If it was done as a terror attack on the city with the aim of harming thousands of people, then that would be on the there would be people streaming video of it landing, of it happening, and it's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but actually videoed, and it would be really awful. And that in that situation, then the Russian people would know about it. They couldn't hide it from the Russian people, and so there is that side to it as well. And then with that added to it being so humiliating for Russia, then surely Putin wouldn't be then think that he'd make any sense to use more nukes after that. So it would be nukes, then conventional responses from the US side, and the Russian military is just so feeble. A few hundred F-35s, just even a few dozen F-35s, which would be fighter jet invisible to the Russian, and if they try to switch on the radar to see them, then they can shoot out the radar from the air. So I think, particularly because Russia's been shown itself to be so defenceless, and just telling them what they're going to do would not make any difference, because it'd be just like HIMARS. There's nothing that Russia can actually do to stop it. They just don't have the capability. and they're not going to be able to develop the capability for the duration of this war. So that's just how I understand it. It is piecing together bits of information. All the actual information I have is that General Petraeus said that one of the targets could be something in the Black Sea, and I don't see what else it could be except the Black Sea Fleet. I mean, it needn't necessarily be all the ships. It could be some of the ships, but what else is there that he would have been talking about? So that's the entire basis for this. And if you've got some other idea about what he meant, what else there might be in the Black Sea that he was thinking about as a target, then do say, of course, in the comments.